90-Day Fiance, Sophie and Pedro burn up the dance floor. He is so hot. The night was thick with humidity, the kind that clings to your skin and makes every breath feel like a secret. Neon lights painted the sidewalk in streaks of pink and blue, and the city's heartbeat thumped from every bar and club like a second pulse. It was the kind of night where anything could happen, and for Sophie and Pedro, it was the night they chose to set the world on fire. Sophie's heels clicked on the pavement with a confident rhythm as she walked beside Pedro, her hand resting lightly on his arm. The two of them were a study in contrast. She was all bright smiles and floral dresses, her blonde hair pinned into a playful updo, while he moved with the quiet intensity of a man who didn't need to announce his presence to be noticed. Yet together, they looked like a story waiting to be told. They'd been through so much already: a whirlwind romance, a cross-country move, cultural differences, family drama, and the ever-present pressure of the spotlight. But tonight wasn't about drama. Tonight was about escape. The club was a sudden burst of sound and color, like stepping into a different universe. Music pounded through the air, and bodies moved in unison, as if the whole room shared one collective heartbeat. Sophie's eyes widened in excitement. "Oh my God," she whispered, almost reverently. "This is amazing." Pedro smiled, his eyes lingering on her in a way that made her breath catch. "I knew you would like it," he said softly, his voice blending into the music. "We're going to dance." Sophie laughed, the sound bubbling out of her like champagne. She tugged him toward the dance floor, her excitement infectious. The crowd shifted, parting to make room for them, as if they could feel the energy they were about to unleash. And then, like a match struck in the dark, they began. Pedro moved with a natural grace that looked effortless, as if he'd been born with rhythm in his bones. Sophie matched him step for step, her movements sharp and confident, her body swaying with the music like it belonged there. The pair looked like they were made for each other, the way their bodies fit together, the way they moved in sync as if they shared a single mind. As they danced, the room seemed to shrink around them. People began to notice, heads turned, phones lifted. The energy in the air changed. It wasn't just a dance anymore, it was a performance, a statement, a declaration. One woman in the crowd leaned toward her friend, eyes wide. "He is so hot," she whispered, as if afraid to say it too loudly. The friend nodded, her own gaze locked on Pedro. "I know," she whispered back. "He's like fire." Sophie heard the comment and felt a surge of pride, not because of the attention, but because it was her man being admired, the man she loved, the man who had crossed oceans to be with her. She looked at Pedro, her eyes shining, and felt a wave of emotion she couldn't quite name. He caught her gaze and smiled, his expression soft and full of affection. For a moment, the music seemed to fade, and all she could feel was the warmth of his hand on her waist, the strength of his body close to hers. And then the song shifted. The beat dropped, slower now, more sensual. The crowd moved closer, as if drawn to them like moths to flame. Pedro's movements became more intense, more controlled. Sophie's body followed, her hips swaying in time, her eyes locked on his. It was a dance that wasn't just about steps, it was about desire. The air between them crackled with tension. Sophie could feel her heart pounding, her breath quickening. She was aware of every part of him, the way his shirt clung to his chest, the muscles in his arms, the heat radiating from his skin. She could feel the eyes of the crowd on them, but she didn't care. In that moment, it was just the two of them. Pedro leaned in close, his lips brushing her ear. "You are beautiful," he whispered, his voice low and intimate. Sophie's cheeks flushed. She smiled, her eyes fluttering shut for a second as the words sank in. "So are you," she replied, her voice barely audible over the music. The dance continued, and with each movement, the chemistry between them grew more undeniable. It wasn't just physical attraction, it was connection, trust, a kind of love that made everything else fade into the background. They spun and dipped, their bodies moving like a single organism. Sophie's dress swirled around her, the fabric catching the light like a shimmer of starlight. Pedro held her close, his hands steady on her back, guiding her through each step with a confidence that made her feel safe. And then, as if the universe itself wanted to acknowledge them, the crowd erupted in cheers. Someone shouted, "Sophie, Pedro," and the noise grew louder. People clapped and whistled, their excitement rising like a wave. Sophie's heart swelled. She glanced at Pedro, who was grinning now, his eyes shining with happiness. For a brief moment, it felt like the entire club was celebrating them, not just their dance, but their love, their courage, their journey. Sophie leaned closer, her voice filled with laughter. "We're killing it," she said. Pedro laughed too, his voice deep and joyful. "Yes," he said, "we are." The song ended, and the crowd applauded like they'd just witnessed something incredible. Sophie and Pedro stood in the center of the dance floor, breathless, smiling at each other like two people who'd just shared a secret. As they walked toward the edge of the club, Sophie's phone buzzed. She glanced down, expecting messages from friends, but instead, she saw a notification from a fan account. Someone had posted a clip of their dance, and the comments were already exploding. "He is so hot. Sophie is glowing. They are the cutest couple ever. That's the kind of love story we need right now." Sophie's smile grew even wider. She showed Pedro the screen, and his eyes widened in surprise. He laughed softly, shaking his head. "Look at that," he said. "They like us." Sophie's laughter turned into a soft sigh. "I'm so happy," she admitted, her voice quiet. Pedro reached for her hand and squeezed it gently. "Me too," he said. They stepped out into the night, the air cooler now, the city lights sparkling like scattered diamonds. The world around them seemed calmer, as if the dance had somehow changed the atmosphere. They walked in silence for a few moments, simply enjoying the feeling of being together. Then Sophie stopped and turned to Pedro, her expression serious for the first time that night. "Do you ever think about how far we've come?" she asked. Pedro looked at her, his gaze steady. "Every day," he replied. "Sometimes I can't believe it." Sophie nodded, her eyes glistening. "We've had so many obstacles," she said, "but we're still here." Pedro's smile softened. "Because we chose each other," he said, "and we keep choosing each other." Sophie's heart melted at his words. She leaned in and kissed him gently, the kind of kiss that didn't need an audience. When they pulled away, she rested her forehead against his. "Tonight was perfect," she whispered. Pedro's arms wrapped around her, pulling her close. "Tonight was just the beginning," he said. As they continued walking, Sophie couldn't help but feel a sense of hope, a feeling that maybe, after all the chaos and the drama, they were finally finding their rhythm. And maybe that's what the dance had been for, a reminder that love can be simple, even in a complicated world. Back at the club, the clip of their dance continued to spread. People watched it over and over, mesmerized by the chemistry, the passion, the undeniable spark between them. Comments poured in, praising them, rooting for them, wishing them happiness. And in the midst of it all, Sophie and Pedro were somewhere else, somewhere quiet, somewhere safe, holding hands, smiling, and feeling the warmth of a love that refused to be extinguished. Because sometimes, when two people are meant to be together, all it takes is one night, one dance, and one moment to prove it. And tonight, Sophie and Pedro had burned up the dance floor, and the world had noticed.